It was a chilly evening on October 17th, 2022, when I received the call that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my childhood friend, John Carter. He had been missing for 3 days, and his family was frantic, searching every corner of our small town of Riverville. I could still hear the tremor in his sister's voice as she begged for any information, any clue about where he could be. Despite the warmth of early autumn, a chill crept down my spine as I realized that something was horribly wrong. Riverville, with its charming coffee shops and quaint bookstores, hid a much darker side. Beneath the cheerful facades, there were whispers of neglect, broken families, and unsolved mysteries. John had lived here his entire life. He knew the streets like the back of his hand, yet on that fateful night, he simply vanished. The last anyone saw of him was just outside Murphy's Bar, a local joint known more for its secrets than its drinks. I still remember the day John called me to talk about his life. He mentioned feeling suffocated by the expectations of this small-town life, a life where everyone knew each other's business. The pressure was mounting, and he often joked about wanting to disappear. But I never took him seriously, chalking it up to the typical small-town frustrations. Now, I wondered if there had been more truth to his words than I had realized. As I began to dig deeper into John's life for answers, I learned about his recent struggles. Friends mentioned that he had been acting strangely in the weeks leading up to his disappearance, withdrawing from social activities and spending more time alone. His girlfriend, Mia, had reported several heated arguments stemming from John's apparent paranoia about someone following him. Was it possible that he had genuinely feared for his life, or was it just a manifestation of his anxiety? The investigation began in earnest, and I joined the search party organized by John's family. Flyers with his face plastered across them decorated telephone poles and storefronts. We combed through the woods behind Riverville, where John often went to clear his mind. It was bitterly cold, and the atmosphere was heavy with an unsettling dread. Every rustle of leaves sent a shiver down my spine, as if the very woods were hiding secrets that refused to be unveiled. As days turned into weeks, the police began to uncover unsettling details about John's life that lay beneath the surface. His relationship with Mia was more complicated than anyone had known. Witnesses recounted that they had seen John arguing with a stranger outside the bar the night he disappeared, a man with dark hair and an intense gaze. With each new lead, I could sense the dread building in the community. It felt as if we were standing on the edge of a precipice, waiting for the truth to pull us down. The more I learned about John's life, the more elusive it became. I uncovered a history of small-town secrets, a web of betrayal and envy that had tangled itself around his disappearance. Then, an anonymous tip came through. Someone had seen John at a gas station miles away from Riverville on the night he vanished. But when the police followed up, the store owners remembered nothing, as if he had never existed at all. As the investigation dragged on, I started to piece together a timeline that pointed towards something darker lurking in Riverville. It turned out that John had recently become involved with a group of local artists, a community that thrived on the fringes of societal norms. Perhaps there were people among them who did not have his best interests at heart. I couldn't shake the feeling that jealousy might play a role in his sudden disappearance. In early November, the police conducted a search of an abandoned house rumored to be a hangout for the artists. They found messages scrawled on the walls, angry outbursts directed at John, accusing him of betraying their trust. What kind of betrayal could drive someone to such rage? And could that anger have led to something more sinister? The notion gave me pause. Was John a victim of circumstances beyond his control? Rumors began to fly around town, each more outrageous than the last. Some said John had staged his disappearance to escape his life, while others whispered about dark rituals performed by the artists. I found myself meeting with Mia again, desperate for clarity. She told me how in the weeks before John vanished, he had been receiving strange messages from an unknown number, messages that made no sense. He didn't share the exact contents with her, but she could see the fear in his eyes. As more time passed, the search for John took on a desperation I had never expected. With each day, more questions replaced the hope that he would return. The artists became reclusive, unwilling to talk, and as their silence grew, so did the town's paranoia. The police maintained a presence, but it felt futile as their leads dried up like the autumn leaves falling from the trees. It was then that I stumbled upon an old newspaper clipping buried in the archives. The article detailed a series of unexplained disappearances from years past, eerily similar to John's case. Each story spoke of young men who had vanished from Riverville, leaving families to mourn without closure. I felt an ominous weight settle over me as I realized that perhaps this was not just about John. Perhaps a pattern lay hidden in the fabric of our town's history. But who was the hunter and who were the prey? Determined to find the truth, I approached the local council members. Their faces went pale as I recounted the history I had uncovered. They brushed me off, claiming it was mere coincidence, but I could see the fear in their eyes. It was a fear that pulsed through Riverville, a secret that no one wanted to confront. The whispers grew louder, and the air thickened with tension. We were all aware that darkness lurked just beyond the reach of streetlights. Just as I feared a complete dead end, I received a tip from an anonymous source. "Look in the old woods. There's something there you need to see." Driven by desperation, I ventured into the thickets alone, flashlight in hand, hoping for a clue that might lead to John. The woods, thick with fog, felt alive, the branches twisting like silent fingers reaching out from the darkness. My heart raced as I stumbled upon a clearing. In the center of the clearing lay a metal box, half buried in a pile of leaves. I hesitated, my breath catching in my throat. Was this connected to John? My instinct urged me to turn back, but I pressed on, fingers shaking as I pried the box open. Inside, I found strange artifacts, paintings, letters, and photographs depicting John in ways I had never seen before, with eerie symbols intertwined in the background. I realized these were not merely personal items. They felt like part of a ritual. Fingers trembling. I took photos of the evidence and hurried back to town, my mind racing with the implications. If this was the work of the artist community, there was no telling what darker truths lurked behind their charming smiles. I presented my findings to the police, but their response was disheartening. They were hesitant to pursue leads that might involve local artists, fearing backlash from the tight-knit community. The weight of the investigation was heavy, but I couldn't let John's disappearance fade into obscurity. Days turned to weeks once again, but my determination only grew stronger. I began to gather other concerned citizens, building a coalition of sorts. A group that refused to let John's case become just another forgotten story. Together, we organized a community meeting aimed at confronting the artists about their potential involvement with John's disappearance. The atmosphere crackled with tension as accusations hung in the air like smoke. Every eye was fixed on them, as if we were all waiting for the moment the truth would spill out. But the artists came prepared, armed with their own narrative devoid of blame. They claimed John had manipulated them, used their trust for his gain, and that they were relieved he was gone. The room exploded with bewildered voices. Their words dripped with venom, a chilling acknowledgement of their own dark potential. I stood there, feeling as if the ground beneath me was beginning to crack, the truth slipping away into shadows once again. As the meeting drew to a close, I caught a glimpse of an artist sneaking out the back door. My instincts kicked in, and I followed, heart pounding in my chest. Outside, the cold night air enveloped me as I trailed him through the winding paths of Riverville, the moonlight casting ghostly shadows. I could feel that I was getting closer to something, but the deeper I went, the more twisted the story became. Finally, he stopped near an old warehouse, a place shrouded in darkness and secrecy. I held my breath, edging closer to hear their hushed whispers. What was being said? What had they done to John? I barely contained the urge to confront them as I caught snippets of their conversation, things about cover-ups and silencing those who knew too much. It sent waves of dread coursing through my body, the reality of it all hitting me hard. The whispers of Riverville were no longer just rumors. They were a dark, malevolent force. Suddenly, a flashlight beam pierced through the darkness, catching me off guard. I felt my heart race as the artist I was trailing turned to face me, eyes wide. Panic surged through my veins as he yelled for help, claiming I was a trespasser. In that moment, I realized the danger I was in. I wasn't the investigator anymore. I was the hunted. With urgency, I turned and ran, adrenaline propelling me through the night. I barely made it back to my car, heart pounding in my chest, trying to piece together what I had just witnessed. I needed to gather my thoughts, but the shadows loomed closer. John's case had morphed into something beyond just a missing person. It was a tangled web of deceit, paranoia, and danger. For days, I pondered the risks, feeling the weight of the town's past pressing down on my shoulders. Could I really expose the truth without becoming a target myself? After a sleepless night, I knew I couldn't back down. I called a trusted journalist from a nearby city, hoping she could help expose the darkness lurking in Riverville. Her interest piqued. We arranged a meeting to discuss what I had uncovered, hoping her voice could resonate beyond the small-town confines. But as the sun rose, casting ghostly shadows over Riverville, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap. The journalist arrived, eager and enthusiastic, but I sensed her skepticism. As I recounted my findings, I noticed a flicker of doubt in her eyes. "Are you sure you're not just caught up in a conspiracy theory?" she asked pointedly. It stung, but the lump in my throat reminded me that I wasn't just a bystander. I was a part of the narrative, and I had to stay strong. Riverville had buried its secrets for too long, and John deserved justice. With her help, we devised a plan to gather further evidence and shine a light on the hidden corners of Riverville. Together, we would confront the artists and demand accountability. As we pressed forward, the atmosphere thickened with tension. It felt as if the entire town was holding its breath, waiting for a spark that might ignite the darkness. Little did I know, the real danger awaited us just around the corner. As we prepared to unfold the truth, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. It was as if the shadows had come alive, whispering warnings of what was to come. The more we delved into the investigation, the more the darkness closed in. Riverville had grown uncomfortably quiet, a town holding its breath before a storm, and I was at the eye of it. The chilling realization struck me hard. What if some secrets were never meant to be unearthed? As the confrontation with the artists approached, I could feel the unease in the air. The community meeting was set to take place at the town hall, and for the first time I sensed fear not just from the artists, but from the community itself. What would happen if the truth came out? Would it turn everyone against each other? As the sun set behind the trees, casting long shadows over Riverville, I realized I was no longer searching for John. I was now struggling to keep the entire town from unraveling. The meeting began, and I presented our findings with the journalist at my side. As I laid bare the evidence, the tension was palpable, the air thick with dread and disbelief. But as the audience's murmurs grew, I caught sight of the artists shifting uncomfortably, their eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. It was clear that the facade they had built was beginning to crack. But as I spoke, I saw a shadow move in the corner of my eye, a figure slipping away from the gathering. In a moment of instinct, I excused myself from the meeting and followed the shadow outside, heart racing. As I turned the corner, I found my breath caught in my throat. The figure was none other than Mia, John's girlfriend, standing alone, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and urgency. She grabbed my arm, whispering frantically, "You need to leave now." The weight of her words hung heavily. Was this a warning or a sign of something even more sinister? Mia pulled me aside, revealing that the artists were watching every move I made. "They know you're onto them," she said, panic evident in her eyes. "You don't understand the kind of power they hold over this town. They can make people disappear without a trace." My stomach dropped as the implications of her words settled in. What if I had been putting not just myself, but everyone around me in danger? The chilling thought sent shivers down my spine. As I considered my options, the night air felt stifling, heavy with threat. Did I really want to continue down this dark path of discovery? With the weight of Riverville's secrets flickering just beyond reach, I realized the battle was no longer just about John, but about exposing a darkness that had long plagued the town. I had to decide whether to go deeper or retreat from this perilous edge. Ultimately, I chose to stay and fight. The truth had to be revealed, not just for John, but for everyone who had ever felt the suffocating grip of this town's shadows. But just as we turned to return to the meeting, a loud crash echoed in the distance. We instinctively turned, dread pooling in our stomachs. Was this the consequence of our pursuit of the truth? The night was filled with an ominous foreboding as we made our way back, unaware of what lay ahead. As we stepped back into the town hall, the room was eerily silent. All eyes were on the entrance, whispers of confusion and worry rippling through the crowd. My heart raced as I caught a glimpse of the artists exchanging nervous glances, concern etched on their faces. What had just happened? Was it related to John's disappearance, or were we about to uncover something far darker than we had anticipated? As we resumed the meeting, the atmosphere shifted drastically. The tension morphed into something unspoken, a collective understanding that this was about to get much worse. I could sense the panic rising, and for the first time the fear felt palpable, not just from the community, but from the very artists who had once held the power. What had been a quest for answers had become a fight for survival, and the price of truth was steep. As I looked around the room, doubt washed over me. Could we truly uncover the truth? Would we be strong enough to face the repercussions of what lay behind the veil? Despite the uncertainty, I understood one simple truth. The shadows of Riverville would not rest until they consumed everything in their path, and John's